for lunch. We had just concluded the discussion for the appeals board, and we are now on the uh, Guam Police Department. The Guam Police Department appropriation level for this fiscal year will total $23,072,794. In addition to that amount, the Guam Police Department will receive approximately $642,332 in federal grants, with local matching fund also slated for federal grants at $561, with an additional match by the feds of $761. The police department budget also includes the addition of a records management officer that was requested by the department, that position having been vacated and was not funded. In addition, of course, to the additional funding from the federal grants, recently announced was a federal grant under the COPS grant, which would give the Guam Police Department 14 new police officers that will be funded 100% by the federal grants. The increase also against the FY 2009 appropriation level, not the requested, but definitely what their current level is, an increase in regular salaries of $1.2 million. That accounts for the increments of the 10% additional above the original 10%. So both 10% are in the budget item. Office space rental is budgeted at 116. Equipment, additional equipment at 72,000. Capital outlay at 852,000. So the appropriation level increase for the GPD are allocated according to what I had mentioned. Any comments or questions? I have Senator Palacios, Senator Tenorio, Senator Agun, and Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to know that the 14 new police officers are not reflected in the budget, and that that's under the COPS program. So despite the showing under the vacancy pool of 25,000, of 29,000, that means that only 14 officers then would be hired.
That's correct. That the vacancy pool there is for the records management officer, that 29,000. In the back, in the administrative section, we have another vacancy pool. The Guam Police Department, for the information of the body, also had individuals that were deployed in this fiscal year. And what we have is a vacancy pool in addition to the vacancy pool for all the other agencies, for those individuals that are returning from deployment. And so in that vacancy pool, then these police officers, even fire personnel that are coming back from being deployed will be funded out of that other vacancy pool.
Which is showing under the executive branch, under the governor's office, you mean?
It's showing under the administrative provision for executive branch.
Okay.
Yes. Page 142 of the bill, you'll see a vacancy. Let me see. We might have just changed the pages. That is, hold on. No. Hold on, because when we I'm sorry, 136, page 136. 136, section 7, additional vacancy pool appropriation. The sum of $864,932 is appropriated from the general fund to the vacancy pool for FY 2010. And so that would be, is where then they can draw, once these police officers return throughout the fiscal year, draw from to fund those officers returning.
Okay, thank you for that. On the item for overtime, I notice here object category 112 is only 500,000, and that represents only 3% of the regular salary. Under standard formula, I think the accepted formula for calculating a reasonable overtime allowance is 10% on wages, which is actually reflected. I'm not trying to jump the pages, but it's reflected well for the Department of Correction. I think Department of Correction, the suggested overtime is 10.5% on top of their the basic salary, and for the fire department it's showing 15% on the $13 million salary. And so my point here is that I think the $500,000 is very little for the Guam Police Department. If we were to calculate at 10%, at least 1.5 million would be reasonable, and perhaps somewhere here maybe that can be reconciled, Mr. Chairman.
The police department, the GPD, actually asked and requested only $487,000 for overtime. We decided to just bump it up to 5. So the request coming out of the administration and the department was for 487.
Well, the only thing that I can think about that's behind that calculation, I think, is perhaps maybe
The budget ceiling, maybe?
a plan to then go and ask for a transfer authority, but definitely 3% overtime markup will not hold, especially in light of the what's going on with the shortage and those things. But at any rate, I like to point that out. And for the repair of equipment, such as vehicles and so forth, will that be covered under the contractual services allowance?
Yeah. They also, some of it is covered under contractual, some of it is covered through DPW's
Yes. Okay.
motor pool up there, and we increased the DPW budget for repair of vehicles, light vehicles up there, to $190,000 from $4,000. So sometimes they are, for example, like body work when they're in an accident, that's not available at the DPW compound. So that would be covered under the contractual. If it was more mechanical or something a little bit that is available at DPW, they can cover that at DPW.
Mr. Chairman, is there an employee, a mechanic position within the GPD?
Yes.
For the police reserve stipend, will that be covered under the miscellaneous, line 12? The stipend for police reserves.
I couldn't tell you that. I'm sorry. I don't have. I can look for that information, but I don't have it readily available.
Okay, so
I won't tell you yes because I don't know.
So I like to share this with you that remember there was an issue regarding that about 3 months ago, that I actually do not support the department's directive to actually prohibit police reserve officers from working over 40 hours a month.
Yeah, that's right.
So that they don't have to pay them the $250 stipend. And I would say that a lot of police reserve officers perform more than 42. So even though that for example, were performing 60 hours, now the Guam Police Department don't want them to work simply because they say they don't have the $250 to pay them. And I do a calculation here that for $75,000, we can actually have 25 police reserve officers every month performing at least 42 hours. Because, 250 times 12 is 3,000. That's for one officer a year. And then multiply by 25. And I just want to suggest to you, Mr. Chairman, if there can be some guarantee that some amount be actually noted here for police reserve stipend. Mm-hmm. This is even, the 250 divided by 42 is only $595 an hour. And but of course we cannot compare this to the minimum wage because this is not about wages. This is just about supporting these volunteers. And I say that when they put in, the 90% of the budget of the police department is for personnel, at least 85%. So when you talk about manpower, free labor, essentially, you would want them to work. And so I think that any amount of money put into police reserve stipend will more than yield threefold the benefit that it is spent for, And so I'd like to suggest to the chair to look at this and in some markup of this bill that perhaps an amount certain be noted for police reserve.
If you want to make a motion, you could make that kind of motion, maybe, and you had an amount in mind. Maybe
now, I would like to suggest at this point that 75,000, and that will guarantee 25. Huh? Okay. 40,000 only? Well, 40,000 would, see, 40,000 would be like
okay.
only 12 officers a month.
Yeah, okay, so if you make a motion, we'll find $40,000 within the police budget to allocate for police stipends. We will do that.
Okay, let me just one
Okay.
second. No, I'm okay. $3,000 a year times 45,000 to guarantee 15
Okay.
15 reserve officers performing a minimum 42 hours. And these guys are going to perform more than that. They don't just stop as soon as they qualify for the 250. So 45,000 will guarantee to fund 15
Okay.
reserve officers performing beyond 42 hours.
All right. So the motion is for the committee to look at the allocation of the budget, maybe look at it under the miscellaneous or any other provisions, so that we can find and allocate 45,000 for police
stipend.
reserve.
No
stipend.
less than 45,000.
No less than 45. Senator Wampat, it's not to take it out. It's to. I know your general motion is that any reduction goes to GPD. He's not reducing it.
No.
I mean to DOE.
So that's my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. On that motion, no objection.
No objection.
Motion carries.
And for now, I'm okay. I'll listen to the presentation of the others. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I have Senator Uggan next. Oh, no, I had you then, Senator Tenorio.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just to, I think one thing about discussing budgetary allocations, I think that the committee and yourself have done a fine job in terms of being able to break down the total allocation for the Guam Police Department. But in terms of looking at the overall picture going into the next FY, there are a couple of other factors that I think our people need to be cognizant of and also need to be brought to their attention. One is that the chief executive has up to, and this was mentioned previously also during this budgetary discussions, up to $18 or $19 million in ARA funds that are solely dedicated towards law enforcement components. So how the chief executive decides to divvy that up, whether a portion goes to the Guam Fire Department, a portion goes to the Department of Corrections, and a portion goes to GPD, I would anticipate some would go to the Guam Police Department. So that's one aspect that I wanted to share with our members as well as the public. The other provision, I think, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, is that looking at the Compact Impact Funds allocation, we know that of the $16.8 million that will be coming to Guam in fiscal year 10, that 7.1 is set aside automatically for the debt. So that the lease agreement. 3.5 has already, based on information provided to me by GMH officials, 3.5 is set aside specifically for GMH requirements. Now there's a balance of 6.2. I have no additional breakdown beyond the information that I just shared with you, only because I think that the chief executive, we need to acknowledge, has $6.2 million remaining in what he can divvy up to the respective government Guam agencies, and also in this case, traditionally in the past, he's been able to allocate some resources to support our law enforcement agencies such as the Guam Police Department. So in totality, we are not only looking at this budgetary allocation, we are also looking at the strong potential of having ARA, the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, funds of up to $18 or $19 million being allocated towards law enforcement, inclusive of GPD, and then a remaining balance of compact impact funds for fiscal year 10 of about 6.2, which the chief executive has the flexibility to allocate. And like I shared with you earlier, traditionally has provided additional resources to our law enforcement agencies, inclusive of GPD. So I think that we also need to be very cognizant of that in terms of exactly what resources are going to our law enforcement agencies and whether in fact they're going to receive some additional support. I just would like to, Mr. Chairman, as it applies to the budget considerations, because I understand that there is a particular timeline that the Guam Police Department and their headquarters facility may be up against in terms of the continual use of the facility up at Tizan. And I just want to recognize that there's an allocation of $232,200 here specifically for space rental, which most, if not all, are allocated towards the headquarters facility because they're renting or leasing property out of the airport authority. But I understand that there's ongoing activities to try to encourage the Guam Police Department to find another house or another home, so to speak. So based on that, I think that over the course of the next year, I'm sure we'll get more definitive information as to where, if a site has been located, and how that will be dealt with in the midterm and also in the long term, because the timeline that they have an existing lease, I believe, carries them out to 2011 and not beyond that. So I want to share that with our members, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much. Mr. Masa.
Thank you very much, Senator Argon. Senator Argon, I just wanted to update the total amount from the State Fiscal Stabilization Fund that is available to the governor that has been reserved after taking out what goes to education. The updated number is $20.3 million. So it's not 19, it's 20.3. And the compact impact money that the governor has under discretionary funds, he is allocating $7 million for the school leaseback program. He's allocating $4.8,400,000 towards discretionary capital projects. He is allocating procurement for equipment that it doesn't say what, forensic crime, no. Equipment procurement, motorcycles for 600, motorcycles, 642,000. Maybe they're test driving it. That's for the police department. Yeah, that would be for GPD. Immigration and naturalization capital equipment, I'm assuming that's for customs, 500,000. 500,000 for pharmaceutical, medical supplies capital equipment. Another 215 for building and renovation, DYA. The additional psychotropic medication for Department of Mental Health. 100,000 for DPR, for public parks projects. For DISIT, permanent injunction projects at $500,000. For the Guam Fire Department, structural fire rescue pumper truck and boat at $750,000. For the Guam Memorial Hospital under the pharmaceutical supplies and building equipment improvements, $3.5 million, for a grand total of $19,182,332. That's the good news. The bad news is that the total grant under Compact Impact is $16,800,000. So some are going to have to fight for their allocation. And we can email this federal grant, federal programs inventory to your offices. But that is the total amount allocated and the total amount available. So thank you very much. Senator Tenorio, you're next.
It's good to know there are going to be more motorcycles out on the road.
Yes.
I rode those for a long time. Well, you've covered a couple of my questions already, so it's good to follow number 3 in the list. I do want to add one thing that you're already aware of, Mr. Chairman, and with regards to the returning police officers, and I've got a sum of $142,000 and change, which I'll be adding to an administrative provision later on, because we have 2 police officers who are waiting in the queue, who are ready to go to work, who've been working for many, many years in the police department, PO3s that Santos and Volta coming back to GPD. So I want to thank you and your staff also with working with me. I really appreciate the cooperation, because these officers need to get back, and when we make that amendment later on, the administrative provisions, that will make it possible for them to do so. I also want to talk about a little bit about the vehicle situation. I'm told that the police officers are experiencing a lot of breakdowns, because even though they got a lot of cars in the last in this administration over the last 6 years, many of them are actually falling by the wayside. And I know there's probably not a lot of money. I think I heard motorcycles there. I'm sure the cruisers are not included in that.
No, I didn't see any.
So in the not too distant future, hopefully we'll be able to deal something to assist them in bolstering their cruiser fleet. The allowance for the police officers for the uniform, is that under miscellaneous provisions, or is that under the $109,000 that's allocated? Is that the
Yes,
that's
I do recall that the uniform
allowance
was in their budget.
Right.
I'm not sure whether it's in supplies and materials or in miscellaneous, but I know that they submitted it and we included it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know, because I know it's broken down differently, obviously. So I just want to make sure that is clear. And then the rent that was mentioned here about the 200 and what was it?
The rent is at $232,000.
Right. Is that the agreeable amount from the airport? Do you know?
That's the amount that was.
I remember hearing something about $400,000, but I don't know if that's accurate. And this is for the Teason property, correct? It's not for.
Yes, that would be
Just for
their
Teason.
for their headquarters. Yes, I think we increased that rent. Yeah. Yeah. This is for the current for FY 2010. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that GPD does have unpaid rent. So.
Oh yes, they do.
They have rent
That's
that is
back due.
Back.
Right, but
Yeah.
that's not what we're taking care of here.
Right.
We're just
No,
taking
no,
care of
it's
for the
not.
fourth
Correct.
fiscal year.
Correct.
Okay, and then one more time, I just want to make sure I hear it straight from the horse's mouth, that the additional 10% increment for the law enforcement, inclusive of GPD, of course, is already calculated in the total personnel.
That's correct.
So they're going to be 20% by this next fiscal year.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay. All right. Senator Blas, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have to share the same sentiments and concerns that Senator Pelosi has about with regards to the overtime and the special pay, recognizing that, based on experience, I don't know whether that's going to, that actually is going to fit. But, there are 2 other areas here that I'm most concerned about. One is with travel, the off-island travel. And the second one is under the area of miscellaneous expenses. Mr. Chair, do you have, was there a breakdown that was provided by GPD for last fiscal year, for this fiscal year, with regards to what they spent in travel? And I ask this because, again, unless there has been a drastic and dramatic change in as far as the travel is concerned, travel for the most part from GPD came from 2 different sources. One was under the Edward Byrne program, and the second one came from actually the Homeland Security program. There was an effort to be able to utilize those resources to be able to accommodate their travel needs.
Yeah.
And $102,000.
This is, if I could just indicate and clarify, the $102,000 for travel is entirely under the Recreational Boating and Safety Program, which is a yeah, it's a match for the federal grant. I don't know why they put it under travel,
Yeah.
but it's a match for a federal grant. But
So is it a one-for-one match for so that's $202,000 in travel for a year?
see,
There's only 2 people in that program, Mr. Chair.
yeah, see, no, yeah, I don't know why they put it under travel. That's where they had put it on. I don't think it's for travel. I think they may have put it in the wrong category, and I didn't catch it, and I didn't change it. But it is a match for the Recreational Boating and Safety Program, and we'll have to clarify whether it is in the correct object category. But it was in the object category that was submitted by GPD.
Yeah, and
I'm glad you caught that. We'll just have to ask GPD, is that the correct place to put it? Because we relied on their submission
yes.
on that number.
And I appreciate that because again, if this is going to be a one-for-one match, that's $204,000 for 2 people.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be for travel. I think it would be for the program. So we'll have to clarify that.
Okay, and well then, you know, and well, you know, then let me bring up another concern, Mr. Chair, while we and maybe this
Yes.
can is under the miscellaneous $109,200. Is there did GPD provide a breakdown as to what? I've always been leery about this category.
Yeah.
You know, in the police department, you know, out on the streets, you know, there's this catch-22 and there's this thing called imprudent driving. I remember that one of the things I was taught in the police department is if you know that he was going fast, but you didn't know how fast he was going, and you figure out that there's something wrong with his driving, it's imprudent driving. You know,
Yeah.
and I think this is the imprudent driving
Provision.
citation of the budget in this budget category, miscellaneous.
Yeah.
I'm a little leery.
We're pulling that up now
Thank you.
to the breakdown of that category.
And if I can, I don't mean to stall this anymore, Mr. Chair, but I think that in those 2 different categories that I pointed out, if we can get some clarification, because if I, for one, feel that there is not enough justification given by them, I'm going to proffer then an amendment to, you know, to move this money where, recognizing that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we were able to find that. The $109,000 under miscellaneous was, in fact, as I mentioned to Senator Palacios, that the clothing allowance was either in miscellaneous or in supplies. The $109,000 in miscellaneous is the clothing allowance.
Okay, so that's the
Yes.
closing allowance. Okay.
And it's in the office of the chief.
Okay.
So-
Then I guess my only question, and you know, if I can, notwithstanding any of the rules of the engagement, everything is until we get the information with regards to the travel and
Right.
that 220 category, that we be allowed to come back to it.
Yes.
Okay, and so that we can make some proper adjustments. I'm
Right.
really concerned. $204,000 for 2 people to travel off island is a heck of a lot of money.
I'm pretty sure it's not the travel. They must have misplaced it in the categories. Thank you very much. We will reserve that, and we'll get that clarified. We'll place a call
Thank you, Mr.
to
Speaker.
GPD at this time. Senator Calvo, you're next. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Calvo, I'm sorry. Speaker Wampat was next. I apologize, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's a very simple question. I know that there was an announcement that there was going to be our monies are going to be made available to hire a lot of police officers, and because of that, then I'm wondering now that it would augment, of course, their staff, and more than likely, then there would not be the need for a greater amount of overtime when you have. We always say that the problem is that the lack of officers, of course, in all the different law enforcement offices, is that we need to put in more retirement monies for that. Do you know when then that those monies will be available so that these officers will be hired?
Well, my understanding is that the grant has been announced, that the money is available, that they will be processing the recruitments for those 14 officers. So conceivably, the hiring of these officers, but remember, we still have to then put them through the cadet training program and that. So before they get to the streets, it could be, I'd defer to the individuals here, former Chief Guthertz, Captain Palacios, and of course Senator Blas would be more conversant of how long it takes to get a police officer from recruit to police officer status. So I defer responding to that question to anyone who wants to volunteer. Captain Palacios, how long would it take between the time you hire a police officer, put him through the academy, and then he's able to, is it 18 months?
Actually, if they were to complete the Balea itself is 12 months.
Okay. So and that's required.
That's required.
Okay. So it would be conceivably, Speaker Wampat, between 12 and 18 months. Now, if you have Balea graduates out there now, then they could be picked up, and it would be a 3 to 4 months period before they get on the into the streets, so to speak. So, no, you cannot cut the overtime at this time.
No, that wasn't my intention. I was just trying to help. As a matter of fact, I was going to make the amendment then that the off-island travel, if that amount was exorbitant, that it actually be transferred over then to the overtime.
Yeah, but okay.
That's
But we
what
still have to clarify that.
Okay.
Okay.
Otherwise, that
And
would have been my motion. We have to help our officers. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Calvo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, again, on page 73, and I'm just doing it from an arithmetic standpoint, when you look at the grand total of $22,995,662, based on the appropriation class, object class, and the amount, and you have the line item, and you go over every one of those numbers, and I've done it 3 or 4 times, and it keeps on coming to the same number. When you add from items line 1 through 16, the totals I'm coming up with is $22,743,380. And I see a grand total here of $22,995,662. And that it compares with the grand total in line 22 of $22,995,662 when you add the federal matching grants and special funds. But if you add those line items above, you're having a discrepancy of about $252,282.
Yes.
And my question is there something missing from line 1 through 17 that would add up to the $22,995,662 rather than what I've added up?
We're looking to see on the other spreadsheets as we transferred those numbers from the other spreadsheets that we have, and we'll verify those.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I am positive your arithmetic is correct.
Yeah, I know it is. And that's what my concern is, Mr. Chair. Just a little bit earlier, again, and I don't want to go back to the other agencies, but again, there was a $365,000 issue with an earlier department, and good news for Chairman Wampat. And then again, a $532,000 issue earlier that I still haven't gotten an answer to. And my concern is I don't know if these are technical in nature, but they're fairly substantial. So I'm requesting that the Office of Finance and Budget reconcile this.
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Calvo. Any other comments, questions? If not, we'll conclude the discussion on GPD with the provision that we come back with the answer and response to the recreational boating safety program that has a $102,000 in the travel category, but we do know from the submittal that was a matching requirement for a grant. So, Senator Palacios.
I'd like to request your office to look at the line 15 on the telephone toll.
Yes.
This is 267,882, and I look at, for example, the let me see, I think the Department of Correction is 70,000 for that, and I think the on page 104, the fire department, and I want to understand why that is so much. The fire department is 93,000 for telephone budget. For the Department of Correction is 70,000, but then for the GPD, 267,882, and I just would like to request your chairmanship to confirm that again.
Yes.
Whether that is not too much.
Okay, we will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Okay. We're now with the Department of Corrections. The Department of Corrections has a budget allocation of 17,997,630 total. There is the Department of Correction will also receive an estimated amount of $830,000 in federal grants in addition to the GovGuam local appropriation. The general fund requests in terms of the FY09 versus the FY10 increase by about 7.83%. The funding requests, again, the Department of Corrections budget includes the funding of the second of the 10% increments for the salaries of the individuals. There was also a request by the department to fund a property control officer. We approved that position last time, and it wasn't recruited for or funded. This year we're funding for that position and allowing recruitment. In addition to that, the submittal of the request, because of the budget ceiling, did not fully fund the meals program or the meals requirement by the department in the original submission. And so this budget increases that amount and fully funds the meal program that is required for the detainees as well as the prisoners. Regular salary increments increase by $251,000. We also increased capital outlay 450 equipment to 182. Power based upon consumption had to be increased to 127,000. And the contractual services was also increased up to 579. So these are the increases that were made in addition to the requests. Senator Taitegui and then Senator Blas and then Senator Palacios and Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to office space, I think that's just a typographical error. I believe it should be 114,000.
That's correct.
It's only 100.
We've verified that.
Yeah, and that's already clear. Does that reflect the 16,116,000 too?
Chris?
Or does that still stay? Yeah.
We're just gonna,
There'll be a change on that as well.
yes.
You mentioned earlier with the salary increase and the increments in here at 8,132,210. And as I'm looking over to the summary budget that was submitted by BBMR, it's lower. I'm looking at 8,909,000. Are we on the same one that was, or was there a supplemented version of the summary budget? And I'm just noticing it is dropped compared to that summary budget for Department of Correction.
Which one?
I'm looking at the BBMR supplement, the budget digest.
Okay.
The request for FY 2010 at 8,909,987. That is just for salaries and increments. Do you have that same page, or because I have the one that was submitted during budget hearings, and then I'm seeing a drop.
Yeah, when we looked at the budget for the departments, we looked at the third quarter staffing patterns, and they may have requested a bigger budget in the beginning, and for either they may have had vacancies that were not recruited or people resigned. So we went off the third quarter staffing pattern, and the individuals that were on staff as of the third quarter, and that's what we base the budget on for the next fiscal year. And these numbers that we had basically were submitted by the governor's office, I think late January 31st, February 7th or something to that. February 23rd, I think, was the details. So there were changes in the request as well as the actual individuals that are on the staff of the departments and agencies at that time.
Okay, the contractual services then, the 4,060,80, according to my same budget digest here, it's showing a big increase, almost $1 million increase with that.
Right, because the contractual that was submitted in February did not fund the meals fully.
Oh, that's what you were
Yeah,
explaining
so
on the meals.
that's why we had to increase
So
it by
put it in
over $1
there.
million,
Okay.
close to $1 million, because that was the way the contract works, and so we had to increase it to make sure that you know, the treatment of the prisoners meet decent and humane standards. We have to feed them, so we had to increase it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Senator Taitagui. Senator Blas? Oh, okay, thank you. Senator Palacios?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the clothing allowance is also included in this budget?
I believe so. I believe that would also be in miscellaneous.
Okay.
I'll verify, but I believe.
On the clothing allowance, is there a fixed amount? I understand that the current budget and the budget previous to that is at least no less than $350 per person, of course, per year. And I wonder whether there's an amount identified rather than just a general remark of clothing allowance.
Let me find that in the detail.
Okay. At any rate, I think that if it's not there, then I think that there should be at least the amount of $350, no less than $350, because I plan to, I guess, offer an administrative provision at the end when that would be issued as a standard note on previous budget.
Okay.
So at that point, then I will cite perhaps the amount,
Yes.
which is actually the current amount.
Right. That'll work.
and the date.
Yes, we could do that at that time.
Okay, then.
That what is required by statute or
Okay.
regulation be
Okay.
released.
That
Yes.
the clothing allowance authorized in this act shall be no less than
Correct.
and shall be issued, whatever.
Yes, we could do that.
Okay.
Okay.
For your information, and this probably has not much to do with budget, is that the current situation with respect to the inmates versus detainees right now with the Department of Correction is that right now, as of today, for example, there are 247 inmates and there are 312 detainees. And the reason I point this out is that there is, I think, a necessity to discuss the handling of detainees. The detainees is now taking up 60% of the time of the Department of Correction, where the statute actually provides that the Department of Correction, of course, take custody of those incarcerated or adjudicated and those directed by the court through magistrate hearing. But it's my understanding that they continue to be responsible for overnight confinement. But that's an issue I'll take up later on with of course, at a meeting with the AG. But I just like to share that with the committee at this point. I guess the overtime allowance for the Department of Correction is consistent with the 10% based on the wages. I think that's reasonable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Palacios. Senator Cruz?
Mr. Chairman, will this budget be able to take care of the issues that were raised in the OPA report?
On the yes,
on the overtime, are they going to be able to pay for it? Are they?
Yes, as well as the hazardous pay issues and other issues. Those recommendations were incorporated.
Okay, and so therefore, you believe that there are now enough FTEs in here that we won't need to be running up $1 million worth of overtime?
Yes, actually, they've been able to reduce them, and they've been able to work.
Is this overtime special pay the lawsuit or the sum that's outstanding, or is this for the upcoming fiscal year?
No, I think this is for the upcoming fiscal year. Right? Yeah.
That's their required special pay.
Overtime.
I may have missed your earlier summary. What's the increase in regular pay and the number of FTEs that have been added?
I don't have that. I didn't comment on the FTE addition.
That's what I thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. We funded the the property control officer. That's the additional FTE. We did not, and there was not a request for additional FTE for guards, if that's what you're referring to.
I'm just wondering how we're going to be able to deal with that. I mean, we saw from this last fiscal year that with the number of guards that they have currently FTE positions, they've run up a huge overtime. We may be short a few more guards in a couple of months when the criminal action is complete, and if the investigation that the director undertook is correct, we may be losing anywhere from 2 to 10 officers.
Mm-hmm.
But will we have enough FTEs at DOC to be able to try to keep the overtime to a minimum?
We are.
But if we didn't add any FTEs in this budget, I just don't see how we're going to be able to address that.
We have in section on page 139 of this, we have $800,000 in additional vacancy pool, and from that vacancy pool, the executive branch agencies under the direction of the governor can draw FTEs to fill for the various departments and agencies that are the priority placed upon by the administration and the governor. And so while this budget, the department budget doesn't reflect those FTEs in the department budget, $800,000 is available for additional hires where the governor can say, I'm going to take $200,000 of this and put it in new FTEs for corrections. He can do that under that vacancy pool, which is outlined on page 138.
Okay, because I had received the information about the problem with the overtime
Yes.
accumulation before, in fact, the day before you had your hearing on DOC. I
That's
didn't go
correct.
public with it. I asked the OPA to do a study in the hopes that she would come back to me before we had this hearing with a report on how many FTEs she believed would be necessary to obviate the need for more overtime in the upcoming fiscal year. I didn't get that in the report, and so I'm not sure if we're going to have this perennial problem or if we're going to finally resolve it. Okay, I'm just raising the question because the amount of money that is owed to the guards in overtime is really too high, and we've got to figure out a way of having sufficient people up there.
Thank you very much, Senator Cruz. Speaker Wampat?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on the same line, on the overtime, and it's actually in line with exactly what I just said previously with GPD. And I don't know, I'm hoping my colleagues would support this, is that I would like to decrease that overtime by half and put it in the vacancy pool to allow the director to hire more guards so that then we won't continually run into this problem of, having a shortage of guards and having to put them on overtime. We overwork them. They're not in their best, mental and physical state. And I think that we can alleviate a lot of that by allowing the director to hire then additional guards. So that is my amendment.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your amendment?
Is
ma'am?
that to reduce the overtime by half and place that amount over to the vacancy pool to hire additional guards?
Well, Madam Speaker, if I may just comment on that amendment.
Okay.
The overtime and special pay accounts for both overtime and special pay, which is hazardous pay. So it's not all overtime. So there's payment on top of regular salary that by statute and regulation we require to pay these people for hazard pay. And so it's not all overtime, and unfortunately that was not separated out. So if we reduce this, then they're going to be short in their regular salary category because of the need to pay that hazardous pay. So I would.
So well, okay. I mean, I know that makes it a little bit more difficult then if we don't have those dollar amounts. But then, I don't know what would be the entry level to hire then a guard or two, and then I would like to make that amendment to transfer over. Can any one of my colleagues, maybe who has oversight of DOC, can give us a dollar amount?
I tell you,
For one
can we just
guard?
have a
Can we have
short
a
recess
brief
maybe where you can
recess? Okay.
talk with the oversight chair?
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
We'll declare a short recess. Madam Speaker, you're right.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I've conferred with the chair who has oversight of DOC, and so my amendment is then that to reduce the overtime by 300,000 and place that on the vacancy pool specifically for the hiring of correction officers.
Okay, so, and that would be, we'll make that technical amendment in the back when we reduce this amount by 300. Actually, we'll just transfer it to the vacancy pool.
Yes, that's what I said, to the
No,
vacancy
no,
pool.
not the one in the back.
Oh,
Just right here in the bottom.
on the bottom.
On section 2, page 74.
Yes.
Yeah, rather than putting it in the general vacancy pool, we'll just put this vacancy pool, increase it by 300,000. On page 74, line 17. Because these are the vacancies then that
No,
would be for corrections.
Isn't that the vacancy pool for GPD? I thought the vacancy
No, I'm sorry,
pool
the vacancy
is
pool
in
on
page
page
76.
76.
So from 25,554 increased it to
To 300.
325,544. Yes.
Okay. All right. On that amendment, no objections? The amendment
Yes.
carries. Okay. Speaker Wampet, have you concluded your comments? Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right. If not, we'll proceed then to Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture's recommended budget from the executive request increases by approximately 200,000 from 3181 to 602,3369194. The Department of Agriculture also receives approximately 2,967,411 in federal grants, in addition to the local appropriation levels. In this budget, the law enforcement officers also that are designated by the and covered by the increase are funded. In addition, the committee also funds, there was a authorization for promotions of the law enforcement division in here, the conservation officers, and requested the promotion of these law enforcement officers as authorized by law, and that is funded in here for these promotions of these conservation officers. Those are the major changes in the department. There's a total increase in the department of approximately 351,123. We also increased, for example, there was underfunding of telephone as well as power, and those were made up and increased. The capital outlay also increased from 12,000 to 20,000 in this department. No. Senator Respicio?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to recognize you and thank you for this significant increase for the Department of Agriculture. I know it's more appropriate to discuss what I want to discuss under customs and quarantine, but I want to start generating the discussion to kind of lay the foundation for what I need this body to think about. When the legislature transferred the PPQ division from agriculture to customs and have this function under the Customs and Quarantine Agency, and then subsequent to that, the legislature passed the 10% pay raise for law enforcement officers. There are about 12 PPQ employees that were transferred from one agency to the other, and 8 of them were able to transfer over to customs officers, and so they were able to get the 10%. There's 4 more employees, Mr. Chairman, that were not covered under this 10%, although they do similar functions that their colleagues do in the customs officer program. So at some point in the budget and through your advice, maybe when we get to customs, I'd like to offer an amendment or maybe even move this to in the miscellaneous provision. But this is one area where I want to begin discussing, and also the possibility of reconsidering what we did in a previous legislature when we transferred PPQ over to customs. When we did that, I want to say how unfortunate and how unhappy I've been, because customs is no longer seeing the functions of PPQ and the mandates to do the plant protection and quarantine programs. What they essentially did, and we've had countless roundtable discussions and oversight hearings with customs, what they did is they took the money and converted these employees to customs officers, and the focus and the function of PPQ was kind of diluted. And I know you know that and would support the idea of right now the best we can do is have them have an MOU, and they're working on getting that thing signed, where they actually have an agreement between agriculture and customs to reinforce the requirements of the PPQ mandate. But this is a perennial problem that we've seen over the last few years. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Espicio. Any other comments or questions? Senator Palacios and then Senator Calvo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we have, of course, conservation officers in the Department of Agriculture, and I don't see overtime pay or special pay here. I mean, under the circumstances as it is right now, I think they are at a marginal level of manpower to enforce, of course, conservation officers, you know, this wildlife protection and the so I cannot understand why there's no allowance for overtime.
Most of those departments are also, this is the local funding. So a lot of those departments are funded by the federal government, and those are accounted for in the federal grants for those positions.
Okay, so that's good to know.
Now, but we did increase the local funding for overtime special pay to $99,000.
Where on the we're talking about Department of Agriculture?
Yes.
Overtime.
Overtime special pay. There's a.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There is funding for about 99.
Sorry, I'm looking at the public library. I don't know how I get that far.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Let me see. Oh, that's true. There it is. I'm sorry because I was looking at the wrong page.
Yeah.
No, for the equipment and supplies, they pointed out to me when I met with the conservation officers, there is some real good modern equipment and supplies. I think the poachers out there are more well equipped than themselves. I mean, they admit that, and perhaps maybe, I don't know if there's funding for some real good vehicles.
There's none in here at this time.
Okay, 'cause they pointed that out, that I think they only have one that's really working with a four-wheel drive, and you know the function of these people. They go where very few people would go, you know, in terms of enforcing wildlife laws and conservation laws. So, of course, I can always revisit that, but I thought that under the supplies, I hope that there will be some for the customs. The conservation officers.
Yeah, there is $58,000 in local funding for supplies. Once again, Senator, with the there's about $2.9 million in federal grants that are funding other departments and agencies of this, and even their supplies would come out of those grants. So this is the local contribution for the.
So this is in addition to what's not here.
To what's not here under the federal grant.
Under the federal grant.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Uggan, and then Senator Calvo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, just a reconciliation issue. I'm looking at the total appropriations of $3,024,142, and of that appropriation, special funds is $95,000. But then footnoted just in the line 20, the special fund is at plant inspection and permit fund at $91,465. So I don't know whether if there just needs to be a reconciliation. Again, on special funds, you have $95,000, but it indicates the special fund in a specific category at $91,465. So there needs to be a reconciliation as well.
Yes, the 91 is a typo, Senator Calvo. We noted that.
Oh, it should be 95.
Yeah. If you look at the revenue estimate in the front under special funds for this, you'll see that it is 95. The 91,
Oh, so this is technical
yeah, the
nature.
9145 was the original estimate.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay. So, but I do thank you. No.
Guam Public School System was
I
ready
know.
to.
So, but thank you for pointing that out, Senator Calvo. Senator Uggan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick question as it applies to the consideration here, Mr. Speaker, in terms of how the committee presented the budget. Now, looking at the itemized categories, what kind of flexibility, if any, is incorporated into this budget that would allow for movement of funds, let's say 6 months down the line? I mean, I understand that from a budgetary perspective, look, the legislature passed this budget. We want to ensure that you comply with this because this is really reflective of what your needs are and what you shared with the committee members during the budget discussions. Now, is there any flexibility for the chief executive in terms of trying to move funds into different categories? I just need a better understanding of that as we continue
Yes,
this
he would avail himself of the transfer authority to transfer not only between categories but between agencies of the executive branch.
Okay, so there is that inserted flexibility in here. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Rector and then Senator Cruz. No, we're going to have to put it in. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, not to belabor the point, but I will anyway. You know, the Department of Agriculture performs an incredibly important role for the people of Guam. Though it doesn't fall under any of the three categories that people like to talk about, health, safety, and education, it does something critical for us. It protects our flora and fauna and makes sure we track it. It preserves some of our wildlife that is indigenous to Guam and keeps it alive, and it does great things like the Cocoa Project and keeping that species from going extinct. So I always want to point this out. It's $3 million that we have budgeted here, $3,024,142. And while that might seem like a fair chunk of change, it still isn't enough. We could give these people a whole lot more resources. And let me flip to the back of the budget. Something that a lot of people don't realize is under the Department of Agriculture, and that's the animal control part of our public structure, which currently, as we know, driving around on any road on Guam, is not functioning. There are stray dogs and stray animals everywhere because we have quit funding this program. As a matter of fact, we don't even have the program. I believe we have one animal control officer left in the government of Guam, and of course he has no equipment. All we do is we give $100,000 to a nonprofit organization that allows people to drop off stray animals to the animal shelter in Jigo. Well, Mr. Chair, I have to tell you that system isn't working. It's not kind to have animals that are strays. It's not good for our island. It's not healthy for our people. And really, if we ever do have a pandemic, sometimes they can be spread through stray animals. As a matter of fact, wasn't it the Great Plague, the Black Plague of Europe, that was spread through fleas on rats? Well, without having animal control officers, we don't have a part of our public structure that can go out and systematically control these things. And I think we need to revisit this in the future and find out how we can start making this work better for the people of Guam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Rector. Senator Cruz?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is minor, but I really do think at some point you're going to need to run back through the entire budget to do some reconciliation in one category, and that's the drug testing category.
Yes.
Because you have drug testing for the Contractors Board and for the library and for DYA, but nothing for corrections and for DOC. I'm just pointing that out because I'm trying to figure that.
Yeah. Yes, Senator Barnes was preparing an amendment on that. We ran a report of all the departments and agencies that have drug testing. Those were emailed to you, and your offices today.
Oh,
So we did, Senator Barnes is working on an amendment to reconcile all that.
okay.
Yes,
Because I just thought that was a little odd that
yes.
contractors, but not, especially with the problem we just had at DOC, to
That's-
not have drug testing there.
That's right. So Senator Barnes is working on that, and we have sent that out, that report out, so that everybody's aware of that. Okay. Any other comments or questions on the agriculture? If not, we'll then proceed to the Guam Public Library. The budget for the Guam Public Library also received a slight increase, and the increase really comes in the area of additional staff. I do want to say that I've been very supportive of the Guam Public Library and the efforts of the administration to open the village libraries, and want to commend them for that. But it also has presented some problems with their staffing, and so this budget provides 2 library technicians to assist the additional hours at the Guam Public Library, and that increase is reflected in their staffing pattern. The other categories that we increased for the library is in the area of supplies and materials. From last year's budget of $594, we increased it to the requested $28,000. In equipment, we also gave them an additional $5,000 where there was 0 in their request. And the telephone, we increased that category to reflect the current costs rather than the cost that was plugged into the budget due to restrictions from $23,000 to $36,000. So the increase in the budget for the Guam Public Library is about a little over $200,000 for their operations. Speaker Wampat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to know if during the budget meeting, did the library say, the staff of the library say why, and if any of these dollar amounts or requests would actually go towards the opening of the Aggie Memorial Library in Malesso?
Yes, my understanding is the library is open, and they've had to. They've been challenged with some of their staffing, and so that's why we added 2 additional librarians to ensure that they continue those operations. So, yes. Okay. Any other comment, Senator Rector?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll tell you, I once again have to also commend the staff of the public libraries. They really have done an amazing thing keeping them open and keeping them staffed and keeping them running for the people of Guam with incredibly few resources. And while we raised the budget for supplies and materials this year to $28,221, that's not really a lot. When we talk about a library, libraries are full of books, and books are actually fairly expensive. Your average textbook today is cost anywhere between $75 and $100. But even if we say $50 a book, that would only buy 500 books this year. 564 books, to be a little bit more accurate. That's not a lot of books. I mean, how many new books are published in a year? Millions? Really, if we want to fully staff a library and give them the tools and the books that they need so that the public can use the library and get the most up-to-date resource materials and get the most current publications, I think we need to fund the supplies and materials more. Didn't we budget over $2 million for textbooks this year for GPSS? That's a few books. I think $28,221 isn't enough. I think we need more than 500 books a year for our public libraries. I think we need a lot more. That being said, I commend you on finding what you could. And later on, I hope to find more money that we can put towards this so that all the people at Guam can have fully functional public libraries that are fully staffed and fully equipped and full of current publications. Thank you.
Director, any other comments? If not, then we'll proceed with the discussion on the Department of Youth Affairs. Youth Affairs. Okay. The Department of Youth Affairs budget actually the Department of Youth Affairs budget is increased by about 300,000, and that is in addition to the pass-through budget or appropriation that they have for the youth program. What happened is that the reason why is that in the past they took the from their base budget, they actually took a portion of the youth program budget and deducted it from their base, and what we did from their ceiling, and what we did was we just restored the what was deducted from the ceiling and put it back in their regular operation, and then funded the the pass-through program for youth program appropriation of 371 for the runaway homeless or victims of abuse youth. So that accounts for the increase in their budget, but it really isn't an increase because it was what they needed in order for their regular operations, and so that is what occurred in the budget. We also recommended an increase in their supplies to 552,000, and their utilities increased by 35,000 to cover for those costs. So those were the decisions affecting the Department of Youth Affairs budget. Senator Munya Barnes and then Senator Cruz.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chair, maybe you can just enlighten me as I look at item number 3 of the contractual services, and I see it's 81,541, and I just wanted to know what about the contract or the services that's being provided by the nonprofit organization
That's in section 3 of the end of that on page 82. You'll see that $371,000 appropriation.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Okay.
That's where that is, that additional contract.
Okay.
Senator Cruz?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for taking out the pass-through, but I'm just looking at the last year, unless my numbers are wrong, we authorized for regular salary at DYA 2.453 million. The governor's budget was 274 in Bill 58, but the substituted one is only 2633. I was wondering what positions were taken out or not funded.
We looked at the staffing. There was a restatement of the staffing pattern from 2009 to 2010, and in that restatement there was a net savings of $470,000 when we looked at the actual staffing pattern costs compared from 2009 to the 2010 proposal.
So you de-appropriated a couple of the vacancies that they had previously?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the document that you provided us doesn't, unless it's in something else. Do you know which positions you defunded?
I'd have to go back and take a look at that.
Because I took a tour last week at DYA just to find out what they needed, and they've been trying to fill positions, and like Rev and Tax, all of the agencies that are under my purview that I spoke to were saying that they had submitted GG ones and it got lost in that bottomless pit down there somewhere. And they've been trying to get a couple of therapists up at DYA, and they really cannot afford to lose any of their vacant positions.
Okay. We received a updated budget request and a request for some adjustments.
Was that from Mr. Atta?
No, I think that was the last correspondence we got from Mr. Chris Duenas just before he left the department.
Is that June 1st? Is that?
I think that was the June 1st. That's correct. And that's when we restored that additional 153 to their, rather than taking it out of their ceiling, we restored it back into their budget and then funded the 371 separately. So that was the request that we received, and we responded to that request.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out that the governor, even the governor's request was 270. I mean 2.7, and you provided in this bill 263. That's 100 less than they requested. That would probably could be 3 youth services workers, or actually 2 at mid-level. And I'm just trying to figure out if there was any way that some of that, because I noticed that otherwise all the numbers are about the same.
That's correct.
I'm just looking at the regular salary.
We could, if you wish, in that vacancy pool, earmark, a couple of positions if you wish, and that would be again, that vacancy pool is located on page 180 or 138 to 39, 136. I'm sorry, and so in that we had like the $890,000 vacancy pool for the executive branch agencies, and being proposed by Senator Tenorio, for example, here's earmarking a portion of that vacancy pool specifically for GPD. We could do that when we get to that section.
If we could, Mr. Chairman, because I note on page 82 that you have 0 for DYA's vacancy
that's
pool.
Correct. Yeah.
So we can somehow just provide something to DYA.
Okay.
To DYA there. I mean, we had a problem last week with an escape. I'm hoping that we can confirm their new director, and I really would hope to let him get off to a running start with a sufficient amount and with the necessary staff to be able to succeed, as opposed to cutting off one of his legs and telling him win this race.
Okay.
Please.
We will do that.
If you would
Thank
take
you.
that into.
All right. Any other comments on DYA? Senator Blas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I was just looking at and I'm trying to find where we talk about the special funds at 339,068. Normally, you'd have a breakdown as to where it came from.
Yeah, that special fund is spread out in the different categories on top. If you see, the grand total reads 3826747.
Yes, sir.
And then when you look at the total summary of base operational, you'll see that 3487 and 339068 totals 3826, same as that. So that special fund is allocated in the different categories.
Yeah, but
up on top.
Whereas my question, I guess, is
what source is that?
What source?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the Healthy Futures Fund. I'm sorry. We didn't note that.
It's
from the Healthy Futures Fund.
Can we make sure that we make that?
Yes.
And then just adding up, and as far as the other figures, And I think that I'm just adding up everything that's here on both this page and the next page.
Mhm.
Yeah. Whereas and I'm going to refer to page 82, on the central funds, the costs,
Yes.
where it says 354, it actually came up to 351.
Okay. We'll make that arithmetic correction.
And well, with that, how does that, in this 354, well, if it's actually 351, I'm trying to understand the methodology that was used here, sir.
Mhm.
Does that then reflect if it's $3,000 less how does that reflect with the rest of the object categories, or is it separate and taken out? My question, I guess, is the figures on page 82 for the power, water, sewer, medical vacancies, the total there, reflected anywhere in the object category totals provided?
No, it's
Okay.
separate. And in what would happen is there's this utility bank pool, and that's where all of those appropriations for power and water and sewer go in. So when we make those adjustments, then the total adjustment in that pool will need to be made also.
Okay, so then I guess then my question, because I keep referring this and I keep going back to the object categories here, and I notice, it's the standard object. There is a standard object category for water, power, sewer. Recognizing that now there's a bank fund in the pool.
Right.
Is then there a necessity to continue the object category?
Yes, because we wanted the departments and agencies to know that they are being budgeted for water, power, and sewer, so that they will know what their consumption is. They'll know what their agency is being budgeted, but the payment comes out of that utility bank pool.
Okay, so then I guess my question then, Mr. Chair, would be, as an accounting practice or for accounting purposes,
That's correct.
how would this then reflect if then in your object category you have zero? So then how do you charge out how are the agencies going to charge out their power and their water payments when the object category is zero?
Because under line item 2, we say that that water and power are going to the bank, and that is under the department. So it's not up in the top, but it's in the bottom portion, and that money is then appropriated to that bank.
Yeah, and
Yeah, so, because DOA is the one that's paying those bills.
Sure.
And so the utility bank and the health benefits bank are then under the purview of DOA, and then they charge those payments out for the departments and agencies out of that bank.
So recognizing that, then goes to my question is, now that we have this bank fund to be able to pay this, is it necessary for us to continue to use those object categories?
Yes. For an accounting perspective, we need to.
This is a conversation we can have offline.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
I neglected to ask one question. Did DYA make a request for summer youth employment?
DYA? No, not that I recall. It's under AHRD and Department of Labor? The summer youth program? The funding for those programs come out of? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Okay. I know Senator Uggan had his hand up, but did I miss anybody else before him? No, I didn't? Okay. All right, thank you very much, Senator Uggan. I just
Thank you
wanted to
very
make
much.
sure.
Mr. Speaker, you were wondering if that white hand was coming
Yes.
up? You know, that white paper
I just
hand?
wanted to make sure I didn't miss that. Oh, okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I guess I just have one comment on the numerical number 3 on the youth program appropriation. You know, I don't know if the funding directly originates from DYA or under Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, but I was privy to visit a particular facility that is being administered, a service that is being provided to the government of Guam under the guise, I believe, of this youth program appropriation component. And this nonprofit organization has an incredible facility and a wonderful level of service that they're providing our community, especially the youth, in rehabilitating them and getting them out to the community. And I believe that the national rate for individuals who go through similar programs nationwide, the recidivism rate was about 17 or 18%, and in Guam it reflects less than 10%. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think that I'll just go ahead and highlight the nonprofit organization that has the existing contract, which is Sanctuary. They are doing an exceptional job in terms of rehabilitating individuals and youths who fall under the category of runaways, homeless, or victims of abuse, who are being supported by that particular entity during the course of this fiscal year. And I think that they have an excellent program. And just to look at the recidivism rate being much, much less than the national average, I think speaks very highly of the quality of services that our youth are receiving through this particular mechanism. So I just wanted to highlight the benefits of something that I think that we have outsourced to a non-governmental organization that is extremely successful. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Uggan. Senator Ada? Senator Ada?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, if you can confirm in the utility bank fund,
Yes.
there was 103,996 that was budgeted for power.
Yes.
And in looking at the spreadsheet that was provided yesterday, there was an entry there that the power billing for DYA was only 46,000. Then there was another second one, but it had federal. I wasn't sure whether that was federally funded or what, but even with the two added up, it only comes up to about $90,000. And then also, if you can verify the water and sewer budget, $130,000 seems awfully high.
Yeah, the utility billing information from GWA was a little bit erratic. I think they were having some reconciliation problems. So we tried to take an average of 2008 and 2009. We kind of looked at each individual agency and how much they were charged in both years. Tried to come up with what we thought was the right number, but the billings were very erratic. Sometimes they would be miles apart, and so we needed to try to follow up on that, but we put in what we thought was the right number.
Okay, well, it seems
I realize.
awfully high.
Yes, I realize that. And we can, once again, reconcile that and just see and do some further research. Anytime we look at this and then we reconcile that, remember, if it's an adjustment, it goes to DOE. Yes.
but well, I can understand the GWA, and on that one, I think maybe that needs to be revisited. But for the power, even at that, was that a projection from yourself, or was it an average from the billings? GPA's billings should be a lot more stable.
Yes, that was an average of the billings.
And it
then
came up to
yeah, they have the group homes in Talafofu. They have the main facility in Manilao. They have the youth service center in Agat. They have a youth service center in Dedido. So all of these facilities are charged to the department.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure it was not another one of the uploading aberrations.
No.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, there's no wash here. There's just uploading. But we'll reconcile that water and sewer Yeah, we'll look at that again. Okay? Any other comments? If not, we'll proceed. No, yes, we are going to EPA right now. Okay? EPA, most of the funds for EPA, the operations are federally funded, and the appropriations here are from the special funds for the department. The Environmental Protection Fund receives, in addition to the $740,000 here for its operations, 3.637,258 from federal funds for the operations of the department, in addition to this federal funding. This federal funding, this local funding is an increase from the 641,731 in FY 2009 to the 740,386 that you see here. The increase comes in the areas of contractual services. In addition, supplies and materials funding has increased from the FY09 of 55,800 to 73,000. There's a slight increase in equipment from 37,000 to 39,000, and capital outlay 450 actually increased to $81,000. And so those are the increases for the department over the FY 2009 funding level. Once again, the majority of the funding of this all come from the special funds and not from general fund support. Any? Yes, we will. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Okay, we'll make that correction as required, but no, but it's EPA. It's just EPA. It's just EPA. Yeah.
So if you take this plus this plus the other one, and then subtract the 50,000 general fund, it should.
Oh, okay.
For the number.
Where's the general fund?
It's right here.
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker. Yeah, it ties. I mentioned that they were all from the special funds. I'm sorry. If you see on page 84, there is a $50,000 appropriation from the general fund. So that's why the grand total is that. Yes, under A, and that is for power. They were underfunded by power, and there was not enough appropriation from the special funds, so we added a $50,000 appropriation for power out of the general fund. That's right. There's no need to take because the special funds still total that amount. So, Senator Calvo?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just again, I'm getting a better understanding of this utility bank fund, and with that, I see again your intention of securing a fund source to ensure that utilities are paid, and of course even the medical and dental insurance. The concern I have is, and they're treated a little bit different in every agency. Some agencies, your utility bank fund and health benefit fund will be strictly from a general fund, the general fund.
That's correct.
Others have been on special funds.
That's correct.
Others have been on special fund and general fund, but not specific as to what amounts are going. This one is another. It's a new wrinkle. This one here, you have special funds, but you also have general fund, but you've specified a certain amount. And I guess I have 2 points here. Point number one, there is like in a budget, when you don't clarify where the money, if you're saying here's a pot and we're going to have all these special fund or general fund, but you don't specify how much
Yes.
of a specific fund will go towards paying how much of utility or medical dental insurance, then there's a cloudiness there. And I guess the first question, who would make that determination? Would that be
We'll go back and wherever there is a mix of the funds for a specific object category, we will detail that out as we have. As you notice, in some instances we did do that, Senator
Yeah.
Calvo, and in a couple of instances we did not. We will go back and actually allocate of the total amount, how much is specific from special fund, how much is specific from general fund,
So
and from which special funds.
that one you're going to have to make an amendment later on, right?
Yes, yes.
Because right now, in fact, the public works one was a concern for me because, really, if you look at the language there, technically, whoever has that discretion, and it's still not clear who that discretion is, you could probably pay all utilities and insurance coming from the highway fund or the solid waste fund.
Yeah.
And there's a danger there because, again, if you take it all from whoever is supposed to be, first of all, I think there's got to be very much clarity as to who can make that determination. But now, if you're going to say we're going to do this later on in the bill, it will be our determination how it's going to be split up, correct?
That's correct. Based upon the staffing pattern and where they charge those salaries to, would be the same place we'll charge the benefits to.
Okay, so I can
Yes.
anticipate as we going through all the chapters and looking at this particular fund, that one there's going to be reconciliation by OFB.
Yes.
So by the time we get to administrative or miscellaneous,
Right.
there'll be clarity and we'll
find
come
out.
back and
Yes.
Okay.
And detail that.
Okay.
I agree.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Any other comments? If not, we'll go ahead and maybe we'll break here for the day. Okay. Any other comments on the EPA? If not, we'll go ahead and recess until tomorrow, at which time we will pick up with the Department of Labor. This at 9 a.m. This committee of the whole is in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow.